Guys, we are back for another exciting episode of the Hashtag Wednesday Match Play presented by Eat Sleep Golf. And I am really excited for tonight for a couple of reasons. One, because we were just talking about Tiger, and we're going to talk about Tiger a couple of times this evening. But because this guy has been on the show before it was the Wednesday Match Play, and we're going to talk about that a little bit too. He was on way back, many moons ago, on the Friday Foursome, but now it's Wednesday night. It's the evening versus in the middle of the afternoon, and a lot's changed over the last few months since we've seen him. And Tiger is obviously a big topic. This guy's a blogger. He writes for Golf Newsnet. He writes for Yahoo Devil Ball, and I love his content on Twitter. And I think Yahoo was initially where we got connected, and we talk all the time on Twitter, and he's a big advocate for the game of golf and growing the game of golf and talking about promoting the game of golf. And I'm really excited we've got a laundry list of questions. The guys at Eat Sleep Golf sent over a ton. I've got 10 of my own. We've got the back nine. We got a lot of stuff. So versus me talking about what he does and who he is, I'm going to introduce Ryan from Golf Newsnet. Welcome to the Hashtag Wednesday Match Play, man.
Well, thank you for having me on what is season 2 of this version or of this show, since we did the Friday Match Play, as you mentioned before. I did Friday Foursome. I'm basically in the same spot in my basement as I'm doing the Wednesday Match Play. The difference is the Cubs are in the World Series, and that's one of the backgrounds. So
yeah, I apologize to everyone watching that's trying to watch the Cubs game. Feel free to put the TiVo on pause because this is live in your face. This will live on YouTube, though, so if you can't watch live, that's okay. I'll allow it. But this will be on YouTube, and a link will get shared to Facebook and Twitter and all over the place. But talk a little bit real quick about what you do and how you got into writing for the website that you run and how you got into Yahoo and just kind of what your journey has been into getting to where you're a golf writer.
The short story is I went to the University of Maryland, and I had the original intention of being a sports journalist, wanted to write about sports for a living, just sports in general. And the first day I was told basically I would make minimum wage out of college. And that sounded like an absolute waste of an investment. So I bailed on the journalism program and got a business degree. And some friends of mine were kind of at the forefront of audio broadcasting back in 2001 and 2. And they ran Windows Media live streaming of sporting events for like high schools and D3 colleges. And they did sports talk. So I talked about golf into a microphone with like 5 people listening for 60 minutes, 120 minutes. It was really probably just my parents listening, and they probably weren't even listening that much. But it helped kind of shaped how I still do the podcast that I do today, almost 14 years later. And that kind of made me more interested to write about golf, talk about golf. And that starts a long journey through Waggle Room and SB Nation. And ultimately, Rick Cordella changed my life 6 years ago before the Ryder Cup and asked if I would be interested in writing about the Ryder Cup for NBC Sports that week and to treat it as a tryout. And it worked well, and it went great. And he asked me to help them form what was then called Pro Golf Talk as their blog on NBC Sports. And I went from being a guy who worked in IT for a nonprofit to a guy who writes professionally about golf. And that's been through a lot of different iterations in 6 years between NBC and Golf Channel, Back Nine Network, Yahoo, as you've mentioned, and a couple of years ago decided, this is what I want to do. I want to do this on my own. I want to take it into my own hands, and kind of realizing what's happening in the media landscape, the media industry, especially in golf, that's my best bet to not get fired is to not be able to fire myself. So that's why Golf Newsnet exists.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, you kind of alluded to it with the podcast piece and the audio and the video component. And the guys at Eat Sleep Golf always send over a ton of good comments and questions. And they said that they love that Golf Newsnet offers a combination of written content as well as the audio and video. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between those components and why would you do audio over written and vice versa? And just kind of what's the I mean, and personally, I'd like to know just kind of why not just written and why incorporate the audio and the video components? So just talk about those 3 components and how they work together.
I think, and I'll include even social in the answer, I think all content kind of fits in a different bucket best. You can't kind of fit the square peg in the round hole. And I'll give a good example. So, at TPC Kuala Lumpur last week, they had that 9-foot python on the greens before I think it was the second round of the tournament. And they were running the stimp meter. And it's a really fascinating video that the guys from the grounds crew there shared on Facebook. Websites kind of took that video or took that image and turned it into like a 90-word blog post with the hope of picking up, I guess, some views, which makes sense. I understand, but those views weren't worth it. It's rather better to just share that on Facebook, because that's what that medium compels you to do. Watch the video, like it, share it, move on. And there's different content that works for written, because you don't want to hear me go on a 10-minute audio diatribe about something in a column. You kind of just want to scan the important points and move on with your life. And sometimes you want to have a 30-minute conversation about why Tiger is flailing and the despair that he's not going to reach Jack's number. That's a 30-minute audio conversation. And I don't want to review golf equipment with just a written piece, because you got to see it, you got to feel it, you got to hear it. So I think that's kind of how I philosophize about content, is what bucket does it fit in best, so that the person who's experiencing it gets what's intended to be gotten out of it, and no more and no less. Not trying to kind of shove something down someone's throat, but give them what they want, and hopefully they'll come back for more.
See, and that's so cool that you do that, to that very point, that it's a matter of putting the right types of content in the right medium versus just, I'm a blogger and I post to the blog, and if you want to read my content, go to my blog. And you know, that snake picture, I mean, I've seen that picture in 75 different places, 75 different outlets, and everybody says the same thing, the 90-word blog post. It's like, I'm not even going to click the links anymore. Like, it's a snake in Malaysia on a golf course. Probably happens every day. So
right.
That very point about the content, there is so much content out there. I mean, you mentioned Tiger. Anytime he sneezes, he breaks the internet. So Rory's coming back and maybe playing TaylorMade, new shoes, like everything. It seems to be like whatever's popular for one blog is popular for everybody for that day. Yeah. So you personally, one, how are you gathering your content? And two, how are you different and better than the guy next to you that's writing about potentially the exact same thing?
Those are excellent questions. The content gathering is kind of a mix of things. I think I've kind of, everyone kind of has their own algorithm. What do you think is newsworthy? What do you think is interesting? And for me, because I'm a one-man shop with Golf Newsnet and Yahoo, there's only one man on each of those, so I'm just kind of splitting time. So I'm splitting my own atoms here to do that, because I don't want to duplicate the content on both. And so my goal with Yahoo is to try and find stuff that the general sports fan would be interested in, the general sports consumer would be interested in. So I take kind of those broader things and put those onto Yahoo, because first of all, I'm not going to win as easily on SEO for those topics. So Yahoo can win on those things, and that's what they want. That's a good marriage. For me, I try to find a different spin or a different view toward a piece of content. If I can't, then I'm not going to deliver it in the first place, because if I'm going to say the same thing as you mentioned as Golf Channel, Golf.com, Golf Digest, Golf Week, For the Win, I mean, we could keep going. Then why did I say anything at all if I have nothing extra to add? So that's kind of my view on content, is if I have nothing extra to add and I'm not the first to say it, then what's the point of saying it? And the more important point for me as a human being that needs to get sleep every day is that I only have so many posts in me in a day. So I need to be really efficient with what I say. And so I try to find stuff that is either I'm doing it ahead of other people, or I'm doing it in a way that no one else has, and that will attract some audience and do something a little bit differently. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to bother in the first place.
Now, you mentioned Yahoo, and I thought of this after the fact. I've read some comments to almost to the point of just sheer entertainment. Do you read the comments that you get? Because some of them are pretty mean. Like, people get really personal and really aggressive if they disagree with your stance on things, and it's specifically to Tiger, but there have been some pretty negative things that I've read in comments. So do you read them? And if so, how do you react when people have, I mean, obviously you have to kind of dust that off the shoulders a little bit, but I mean, the comments on Yahoo are pretty aggressive.
They can be, although I will say in like the last 6 or 7 months, I feel like the number of comments have gone down in general. And I don't know what the rationale for that is. I don't know why that is. Maybe because there's less Tiger to talk about. Maybe that's why there are fewer people that are angry about it. But to be honest, I haven't read a Yahoo comment in probably 14 or 15 months. And I've told my parents this. I've told people who care about me, who are like, hey, can't you believe what someone would say about you? They don't know you. I'm like, that's why they feel confident in saying those things. They don't know me, and I don't know them from Adam. And that kind of gives you that internet tough guy attitude that you could say whatever you want and you have no repercussion. And to be honest, if we could all do that in life, we probably would say a lot of nasty things to each other, but it's that kind of human decency that you have to respect other people and look them in the eye and do those types of things that we all kind of expect of each other in person. That doesn't exist on the internet. So you kind of have to understand that and not take it personally, and understand that they know nothing about you. They know nothing about you at all. And that's really true on social media too, depending on how open and honest you are, or how transparent you are with your lifestyle, or who you are, or your personality with people. Or you could just be just kind of funny and not let anyone know who you are as a human being, and that works too. So I think that decision is up to everybody personally on how they handle social media. But as far as Yahoo's concerned, I've kind of learned to accept that vitriol is kind of part of the gig, and just kind of let it live, and don't poke the bear.
I almost want to see like you do like a mean tweets episode, but it's mean comments, like where you just read like 15 of the meanest comments that you felt. But if you're not reading them, then I mean, bravo for you, because I would be sitting there like, what did you say? Like I'd be thinking about it.
And there was a point. There was a point in my life where I would do that, where I would obsess over comments and even respond to some, and some of those people got very heated because those folks didn't really deal in facts. They're dealing in perception. Their perception of you, perception of a story, perception of other stuff. And when you kind of correct them, they get really upset. And some of those people over the years have gone to my bosses at NBC and Yahoo and complained, or not Yahoo, and Golf Channel and complained. And I would go to them and say that this is what happened. I have a record of all of it. They go, yeah, you're right. Just leave them alone. And those kinds of incidents were the genesis for not reading comments anymore.
So do you ever write about stuff you're not passionate about? I mean, if somebody says, hey, Ricky, go write on the LPGA player that made 2 hole-in-ones last week and shot 64 and her name is Jane Doe. Like, do you ever write about things that you're not passionate about, or do you find passion because of your love with the game of golf and everything that you write about?
I think that there are times where I write things where I'm like kind of going through the motions a little bit. I think that happens to everybody. Even if sometimes if you're interested in something, you might go through the motions because you're tired or you're annoyed or you've got something else to do or you got to get out the door. Those things happen. I think that probably happens more for Yahoo, where I'm writing a straight news item that I don't really feel all that interested in, but I know 250,000 people are going to read it because Yahoo's spigot is going to turn on the second I hit publish. I have to do that. That's kind of part of the job. With Golf Newsnet, it's a little bit different. As I mentioned earlier, if I'm not interested in it, it's not going to come through in the writing. So I'm a little less likely to put the kind of stuff out there that is potentially news that really isn't something I care about, unless I know I have it first and I know I'm going to reap a lot of benefit from it. Then I'm willing to kind of put that dispassion aside and say, okay, as a business guy, this is going to make you a few $100s if you post this before someone else does. Even if you don't love it, just do it.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of things you kind of have to deal with, I think, as someone who owns the site and creates the content, where sometimes money wins, and you know that. And that doesn't necessarily make you passionate about it, but you're passionate about growing your business. So it's a different passion I'm pursuing by putting content out there that isn't necessarily something that burns in my heart the second I start writing about it.
Right. Can you give us an overview of GInRadio? Tell us what that's all about.
Sure. So I started that in June 2014. And the reason behind it was because I love radio. I love doing my podcast. Done it for, as mentioned, almost 14 years by and large, except for a couple of years when I was at NBC and Golf Channel, and they didn't really want me to do it. So I didn't. And I feel like there's a lot of good golf audio out there in the world. There's a lot of good golf conversation going on. So I wanted to create an outlet for people to discover that kind of content and listen to it when they want it. And PGA Tour Radio on Sirius XM is really the only outlet in the world that does this 24/7, other than GInRadio. And so I thought there was a gap there. I thought there was something we could do online. And so I've reached out to a bunch of different people whose shows I listen to personally or know personally and like their voice, like their style, and asked them, can I play your audio? I don't make money off of it. People don't sponsor it. But it's a chance for people to hear good golf conversation when they want to hear it. And that's really all it does. And it gets a pretty nice little following. A couple 100,000 people a month listen, which is awesome. But honestly, I would do it if 50 people listen, because I want more people to hear that golf conversation.
See, and I can appreciate that, because when I started blogging, I always said, I don't care if anybody ever reads anything, that if I write 10,000 blog posts and one person reads one blog post and has an emotion and has a reaction, that it was worth it. And that's how I continuously post content. And, you know, obviously you're getting through Yahoo and your website, you're getting tens and hundreds of thousands of views. And I appreciate somebody that writes in that capacity to have a similar feeling to that. And that keeps you humble and keeps you honest. And I can appreciate that as a writer myself. So, you know, I work for Troon, and Troon is dedicated to growing the game of golf. We have the Troon Junior Club, and we're always trying to find ways, whether it's short courses or small loops or forward tees or what have you, to growing the game, getting juniors involved, and not even just juniors, getting the guy down the street that's 65 and has never picked up the club to come hit balls and play golf. So Troon's dedicated to growing the game. How are you, in your capacity as a golf writer, growing the game of golf?
I think there's a broader discussion to be had whether or not that is a golf journalist's responsibility is to grow golf. I don't know that that necessarily is the case, but that's completely separate from how I feel about it. I want more people to play golf. I like playing golf, and I want my children to play golf. I just got a U.S. Kids Golf Club in the mail today, literally from my nearly 4-year-old son, and we're going to go hit golf balls tomorrow. I'm very excited about that. That's cool. I want people to be interested in a game that has done so much for me personally. That's how I make money. It's my career. I wouldn't be in it if I didn't love it. So I want people to play. I think that Golf Newsnet in general, at least how I view it, is it's not my job to be rah-rah. It's my job to think about and present evidence that the game is growing or it isn't growing, why it's not growing, where it's going, where it could be going, where it had been and where it failed or where it succeeded. And then hopefully that leads into a conversation, not only among people in golf, but people who aren't really a part of golf, and they weigh in, and that kind of spins it forward. And that's ultimately all you can really do as a journalist, I think, is try to be a part of the conversation in a relevant way and spin it forward in a way. And I think that some of the work that we've done on golf participation, golf business, and where those things kind of come together, I think that's done that. I think we've at times ruffled feathers, at times made people think a little bit, and those are good things. I think that's the best thing that we can do, because ultimately we don't make a product that people will pick up to play golf. We don't own a golf course. We don't operate a golf course. We can get people to book tee times through our widgets, but that's really about it. So I think my view is to try to keep the conversation going, and hopefully that leads to some action for the people who have more control over those outcomes than I do.
Very good answer. I appreciate that, and I respect that answer. And it's not that there was a right or a wrong answer, but if there were, I think you just answered it correctly. So, you know, Tiger and I have a relationship. It's strictly professional because I've only met him a couple of times, and he's not texting me to come hang out on a Friday night. But when he comes back, it's not if he comes back, and I'm sick of having that argument with people that if he comes back. When he comes back, in your opinion, does he fall on his face and miss the first 2 or 3 cuts, or does he finally come back to where he's healthy, he plays well, and he competes in his first 3, 4, 5 events and maybe gets a win in his first 5, 6, 7 events?
I honestly have no idea, and I don't think anyone even knows, including Tiger himself, because I mean that's the nature of back injuries. You just think about Freddie Couples. He's going to play one of the PGA Tour champions this week for the first time in 8 months because he's had a bad back, and he's had a bad back for 25 years. And you just never know when he's going to show up and play well. You never know when the 2004 Masters is going to happen, or 2011 Masters is going to happen, where all of a sudden a 2 or 3 time Masters champion, and he's got a terrible back and shows up half the time. So I think that's kind of how I try to think about what Tiger could be when he comes back. He could be fully healthy and play 10 events in a row if he wants. He could be very haphazard and play 6 times a year. I don't know, and I don't think he does. I think he's got to figure out when to jump in the water again. I think that will be the Hero World Challenge. We'll get a sense over 72 holes how his back holds up, how he feels, how he performs. I think the performance is less important in that first start back, or even those first 4 or 5 back, than how he feels. How does he feel? How does he recover? Because that's something he talked about in May when he said, I'm not ready yet. I can't play 18 holes. I can't practice like I want. I can't recover like I want. That's the grind of professional golf. You're playing every day. You're practicing every day. You're working every day. So you can't take 3 or 4 days off in a row. And you got to knock that off and build it back up. So I think more than anything else, what we see from him in December, again, assuming he plays and everything's cool, is how does he hold up? I don't care if he finishes last or first. How does he hold up?
And I have been saying this for the longest time, that I feel, the devil's advocate of on the good side, that he has finally waited to come back healthy. That he's not, when he knows how to play golf. He didn't forget how to play golf. He didn't forget how to putt. He didn't forget how to, look at the last tournament he played in. I mean, he quite frankly could have won that event without a couple of holes that he had a couple of gaffes on. And that didn't change. Like the Rorys and the Jordans, and they're better than him and they're younger than him. Guess what? Tiger's got a lot more wins than they do, and he has a lot more experience than they do. That didn't change because he's been hurt. And it's not that he's not practicing. We just don't see it because he's a very private person. He always has been. But I hope that he comes back, and I don't even care if he wins if he comes back at the Hero. I just want him to show up and to play well. The stuff, he's always got to be in the news. He's got the stuff like just yesterday he released some stuff with the Tiger Woods Foundation, the stuff with TGR, which I don't understand that logo at all. But that's totally, we could have a whole episode of this show dedicated to that logo because I despise that logo. But Tiger, if you're watching, I'm sorry. We should have hired a better designer for that. But it's exciting to think about, and just imagine another 3, 4, 5 years of just another Tiger rush. What that would do for the game of golf. And talking about growing the game, there's nobody in the history of the sport, in my opinion, that has grown the game as much as he's done. And just by, I said earlier, he sneezes and he breaks the internet because he's in the news whether you like it or not. And that'll be the case for a long time. And I feel like the TGR stuff has finally gotten into the point that he's kind of planned what happens after the tour. But I don't think he's done with the tour. And I think he's got, he's only 40. He'll be 41 in a couple of months. But I feel like he could come back and have another 5, 6, 7 years if he's healthy and remains healthy. And he can have a run at that record. But we're going to talk about that record here in a little bit. So the guys at Eat Sleep Golf said that they noticed that you had a store on your website. Do you have plans to offer more than the current selection of hats and shirts?
Yes, I do. And that is actually, I have a running to-do list of things, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And it's on my computer all the time. And that is on my short and medium-term lists of creating more shirts and creating more hats. And they're just kind of as they come. They're kind of stupid, other than the GNN logo, which I kind of have an affinity for doing stencils with the GNN logo. So that's really the only thing that's up on that shop, other than some shirt ideas, which we'll do some more of for next year. And if people buy them, great. And if they don't, I don't care. I enjoy designing them anyway. So it's kind of a little bit of a creative outlet that I don't otherwise have in writing or talking or doing video or anything like that. So it's just another way to kind of keep the juices flowing.
That's cool. I dig that. So how many articles per day do you write, and how many articles per day do you publish? Because obviously you're going to write stuff that you're working on, or maybe that you write stuff that you throw away and don't even publish. But how many are you writing per day, and how many are you publishing per day across all of the mediums that you write for?
That's a good question. Writing and publishing are usually one and the same. I am very much a last-minute guy. Like, I could have notes on all of the stories that I want to do, have quotes out, but I bang it out and then hit publish. That's just, I don't kind of like stew over it for a while, save, wait overnight, come back, read it again. No, I'm just the kind of guy that likes to do it all at once and get it out there. So they're one and the same. Yahoo wants anywhere from 2 to 4 stories per day, but that can change. Some days it's 0, some days it's 8. Same thing with Golf Newsnet. The average is probably about 6 or 7 for Golf Newsnet. So if you kind of put all that together, I probably write about 3,500 articles a year between my site and Yahoo. Yeah.
That is a lot of content. That deserves a call to everyone that's watching. Please clap for that. That is impressive. So when does the radio show air, and how can people listen to the show? Where do they go? And talk a little bit about that.
So my podcast is called The 19th Hole Golf Show, and as I mentioned, I've been doing it for an incredible, long time now. So you can find it on iTunes and Google Play Music and Stitcher, and through our TuneIn channel and through Shoutcast. There are a lot of different ways you can listen to it, but and then we post it every week on Golf Newsnet. And then actually in November, mid-November is what I'm hoping for, we're going to have podcast pages for all of our podcasts, which will ingest our RSS automatically. So it'll update as soon as we have a new episode. We're actually going to do that for other podcasts beyond the ones that we own and control too. So for folks who are just looking for a place to try and find new golf podcasts. We'll put them up and people can listen to them. And again, it's kind of like GInRadio. We won't make a dime off of it, but it's a place where people can go and discover good golf conversation beyond the ones that we're having.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on my first paycheck for being a blogger, and I've been doing it for about 9 years. So if you ever figure out where that comes from, please let me know. So your Twitter profile picture is you and Arnold Palmer, and I'm curious. I mean, over the years and through what you do with golf, you might have had the chance to meet him more than once. I've actually never had the chance to meet him. I saw him and Jack at the 2001 PGA Championship, but I never got the chance to shake his hand. But tell me about that day and when you met him, and do you have any other stories over the years of time having spent with the King?
That was the only time I ever met him in person. It was I think June 29th, 2014. And I was at a golf tournament in the neighboring town from Latrobe. It actually is technically Latrobe, but my in-laws live in a town called Derry, which is a town over from Latrobe. And we were playing at a charity tournament for the head pro of my father's father-in-law's Elks Golf Club. And like every Elks, Moose, VFW, like in Western Pennsylvania, has a golf course. And that's because of Arnold Palmer. He inspired so many people to take up the game that a lot of these organizations got together and made courses of varying difficulties and abilities and how well they were kept. But this one's really well kept. Latrobe Elks has some of the fastest greens I've ever putted on, and that's no joke. And I've played Oakmont, and that's no joke. So, but anyhow, so this was an event to benefit the pro at the club. He had been and still is going through Parkinson's symptoms, so they were raising money for not only research but for his treatment. Unfortunately, he's been able to receive some treatment in the last couple of years that's really helped his symptoms. But just kind of unannounced, Arnold Palmer shows up in the middle of the afternoon in his Escalade, and he was driven up, and he was a member of the Latrobe Elks Golf Club. He actually won one of the lotteries that they do kind of every Friday night once while we were there. Like Arnold Palmer won, and of course he didn't come to claim the prize, so they had to draw another number, which is pretty wild. But so Palmer shows up, and the word kind of starts to spread out through the golf course, and my mother-in-law, who was volunteering for the tournament, said, "Hey, Arnie's here. You got to get up there," because they've been trying to put this together basically since I've known my wife to try to meet Arnold Palmer and drive up. And I would have broken the regulator on the cart if I could have to go faster. And got up there, and Mr. Palmer was extremely gracious to everybody, took pictures with people, shook hands, said hi, talked with people for as long as they were willing to talk, signed things. I mean, he did it all, just kind of standing in his car, just trying to support this golf tournament that he didn't have to come and do. He didn't have to do this. And I just remember how big and strong his hands were. And I mean, I think I have pretty big hands. His enveloped mine, and I'm 4 inches taller than he was when I met him. And I just thought, wow, that guy must have strangled a golf club. And I'll remember, he's the only golfer I've ever had a picture taken with. And probably will only be the only golfer, except maybe Jack Nicklaus someday. But that's how strongly I feel about him. And I mean, that's my only in-person experience with him, and it's a good one. And so I'll cherish that.
That's really cool. I'm glad that you had the opportunity to do that. And again, I never had the chance to meet him, and I've not met Jack either. And you would, with my connections with Trim, you would think that would happen. And in just a matter of time, I think, before that does happen. But Palmer had, he's had a special place in a lot of hearts. And when he passed, that's obviously been something that's affected a lot of people. And that's a really cool story. And we're almost out of time. I didn't tell you that this would fly by, and it did. And we've only got a couple of minutes left. But I want to end with that. I have a couple of more questions, but I'm not even going to go to those because that was a really cool story about Arnold. And I've dedicated a couple of previous episodes, especially the one of the week that he passed, to him. And I'm just going to let that be the last official question that I ask. But we're going to jump into the back nine. It's just 9 fun questions that are more golf related than as much you and your blog and your writing related. So are you ready for your back nine?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so you had alluded to that you were on the Friday Foursome many moons ago. Now you've been on the hashtag Wednesday Match Play. No pressure, but which was better and why?
It's a good question. I'm probably, my performance was probably better on Friday afternoon than Wednesday at night because I now have a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old, so it's kind of a tough time of night for me. It's like 10 p.m. It's 50-50 whether I'm awake some nights. So I'm going to say personally it was probably Friday because I probably was better.
Okay, I think I'll allow that. What golf ball are you currently playing?
I am oscillating between the Srixon Z-Star XV and the Bridgestone B330.
Those are two balls that I know nothing about. The Srixon, I feel like I've hit maybe a sleeve of those, and I felt like it was good. I've heard good things about Bridgestone. So, does it spin? Like, is it a good ball?
Yeah, they're both balls designed for players who swing between 100 and 115 miles per hour. I'm kind of in that in between there. And I also play Snell golf balls. I love the My Tour ball. Kind of put that through the paces, but I've kind of lost enough of those that I don't have too many left.
That's why I hate playing Pro Vs, because it's like every time I lose a ball, I'm like, oh, there goes a $5 bill.
There goes $5, yeah.
So speaking of losing things, I'm about ready to break my driver into two pieces. Like, literally, it's that bad. And Dan Attaway, my PGA professional, if you're watching, he's had more text messages. Like last Sunday, I text him that it's probably going to get broken before I finish this round. I'd rather hit a 3-wood off the tee than worry about that driver. But that being said, I'm not bitter about it. I'm just trying to figure out what my next driver is going to be. What driver are you playing?
Again, between two right now. Well, three, actually. The Cobra King LTD has kind of been my gamer this year. It's a very low spin driver. It's really good for the way I hit the golf ball. It's probably meant for a player that doesn't need a whole lot of forgiveness with the driver. Right now, I'm testing two drivers, the Srixon Z765, which is a monster driver, and it seems relatively forgiving, a little bit more so than the King. And then I'm playing the Mizuno JPX 900, which is new, which I think is extremely forgiving compared to those two. And I think any golfer would like it.
And I play Mizuno Iron, so Dan, if you're watching, maybe we should switch and go to a Mizuno driver. I like the word forgiving. You're really active on Twitter, and that's where we connect most of the time. Tell me why I should read your content, regardless of where it's posted, in 140 characters or less, and I will be counting.
Because you're nice to me? No, I would get... I see the world a little bit differently, maybe, and that might be interesting.
I love that. That's definitely less. And I'm not going to count the us and the so that's not going to count into your character count. So I dig that. All right, so we're headed to the 19th hole. We just finished 18 holes. What are you drinking? It's not iced tea. It is iced tea. It's hard iced tea, but I just finished an IPA before that. So what are you drinking at the 19th hole?
I'm generally a beer guy and generally an IPA guy. But it kind of depends on where I'm at. If over at my club, we have Sierra Nevada on tap and we have Goose IPA on tap. So it kind of is one of those two usually. If I've had an especially bad or good experience, we might go to hard liquor. And then there's actually a drink that I'm going to mess up the name of it. But it's really popular among my friends who play. It's basically grape juice, Sprite, a little bit of lime, and just a boatload of vodka. A transfusion is what it's a transfusion is what they call it. And then there's a Cape Cod version of the transfusion, which is cranberry juice instead, and all those things instead of grape juice. So if it went really bad, it's one of those. If it went reasonably okay, then it's an IPA.
Okay, I dig that. So PGA, LPGA. Who's your favorite LPGA Tour player?
That's a good question. I like both Lydia Ko and Brooke Henderson a lot, and for completely different reasons. I like Lydia Ko because I feel like she kind of represents my personality a little bit. I love her steadiness, love her short game prowess. Now she just does everything well and does it with a smile on her face. And Brooke Henderson is raw power. She hits a 48-inch driver, for crying out loud. No one in their right mind should do that. And she does it because she can hit the ball 20 yards farther with it. And she's trying to do everything that she can to win. And she's incredibly consistent, a top 10 player all over the place. So those are my top two LPGA players.
That's better than just like, oh, I like Lexi. So, yeah, good answer. I figured that you would have a better answer than I like Lexi. Okay, so there are a lot of golf courses out there to choose. What is the one publicly accessible, it can't be like Augusta or someplace that you just is absurd. What is the one publicly accessible golf course that is the top of your bucket list that you have not played?
That's a hard decision. I'm going to say Cabot. I'm going to say Cabot Links. I've been invited to play up there a couple times and just haven't been able to make it work. And all of the photos I see from friends who have posted, who have been there, that just makes me extremely jealous. So between there, Bandon, and Stream Song, those are kind of the three places I want to be that I haven't been yet.
Okay, that's a good list. You didn't mention any turn courses, but I'm gonna let that slide because you mentioned some good ones. So now we talked about Tiger a little bit, and this is an hour of time we've now spent together on air. And I asked you this prior, and I'm gonna see how you answer it now because a lot of time has passed since our last conversation. But do you think Tiger breaks Jack's record? Why or why not? And if you say no, this might be the last time we talk. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I don't think that he will, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing either. I think that you have to view their careers differently because they happen in different eras. The depth on the PGA Tour that exists today is created, and by and large, because of Tiger Woods and because he inspired people to play golf that became so good that they became PGA Tour players. The game is more global. There are more organized tours pumping out great players who elevate all the way up to the PGA Tour every single year, and it gets harder and harder to win. So I think Tiger won his 79 PGA Tour events and 14 majors in an era where the competition was better. And so I think if you kind of draw this comparison, okay, so Jack won 73 recognized times, 18 majors, and Tiger won 14 and 79. I think you could still say Tiger was more dominant, and at his best, he was better than Jack was. Jack just had more longevity. He won 2 majors in 1980 at the age of 40. He won the Masters in 1986 at the age of 46. If you take away those 3 majors, which statistically are outliers, they're about the same. And I think that if you think about it that way, then the actual number doesn't matter as much as how you perform to get to those numbers in the first place.
So basically, all I heard you say was Tiger is the GOAT. So, okay. So I'm making sure that you and I are the same. I mean, he's the reason why I play. I remember the first time I saw him. I remember where I was. I remember the seat that I was sitting in, the restaurant that I was at. So that's a good answer. That's a more factual and statistical answer than I've maybe ever heard. You could have won some brownie points by have just said yes, and then we would have moved on to your final question. But that's fine. I'm going to allow that. And I like that you said that it's maybe not a bad thing. And I don't know if Tiger, if he was sitting here, he would agree with that because I feel like that's still a motivation for him. I don't know if he was kidding in the interview that he did with Charlie Rose when he said that he was going to win more. I mean, he could have been, but at the same time, I think that was kind of a smart aleck response that if he does feel that way, I mean, either way, I'm still going to think that until the day he says, I'm done, and the internet literally breaks, I'm still going to think that he's going to break the record. But that's okay. If we all agreed on everything, what fun would this be? And your final question of your hashtag Wednesday match play is, what's next? I mean, you've got a lot of content that you're pumping out, but any big new things coming up for the end of this year and the beginning of next?
Well, we have some news we're going to talk about the next couple of weeks about we're going to expand our content library, especially in golf travel, which actually is good news for True. We're going to be doing a lot more golf travel in 2017 and beyond, so that'll be really exciting. There's a lot up here that, I talked about kind of having short, medium, and long-term lists. I mean, there are a lot of goals to kind of knock off between days and weeks and months and years. I mean, there's stuff I got to do tomorrow. There's stuff I want to do tomorrow. There's stuff I want to do next year. And all those goals kind of come together in the form of different types of content. We'll improve our app. We'll expand GInRadio. We'll grow our audience for next year, hopefully to the tune of 130% like this year. We'll have an Apple TV channel. We'll do more video. And I'm still trying to figure out how to split myself into more people so that I can do that and still feel like during the day. And then on top of all that, I want to be a dad. I want to be a good dad and be a good family man and spend time with my kids as they're growing up and not get so lost in this idea of trying to build a business that I forget that that's what matters more than anything else. And that's why I do this.
That's awesome. Dude, Ryan, it's been so great catching up, and it's been so fun just kind of reconnecting and hearing your comments on things that are happening in golf and how you write the content that you do, the amount of content that you're producing. And I'm excited if chapter 3 or episode 3, as you call it, maybe if there's another iteration of this interview series that I do. I don't think that's going to happen, at least not in 17, because Eat Sleep Golf is still going to be around in 2017. We're remaining on Wednesday nights at the same time. But again, thank you enough for coming back on the show. It's been a pleasure. And I am really excited to be able to have had you on. And there's not been a lot of guests that have been on too versions of the show, but then the ones that have, I don't think any of them have sat in the exact same place as you. So as soon as I saw you when you popped on tonight, I was like, boom, he's in the same seat. I don't know where it is. That's fine, but it's in the same seat. But Brian, thank you so much for coming on. And as always, on the hashtag Wednesday Match Plays, you have to remember to eat, sleep, golf.